All right, here we go. Let's knock out the next module lecture. This is the next micro lecture for module 3. We're going to go into the next decision structure, switch statements. So switch statements are literally the next best decision structure. And in my opinion, it's the only other decision structure. There really isn't another decision structure that we use prolifically as much as we do ifs or switches. So what is a switch? So what's the difference? Why are there two? Well, the if statement allows you to inject or to write a Boolean expression that you want to evaluate to find out if it's true. Whereas the switch statement doesn't do that. What it actually does is it checks a single variable value against a series of other matches that you may write within your code. Now, this sounds wild, and you might be asking, well, why in the hell would I use one over the other? Well, switch statements are actually simpler to use, and they're faster because switch statements don't go line by line in their switch to find out what's true. What a switch statement actually does is it grabs, because it already knows what it wants to evaluate on, like the actual value, it goes out and grabs it directly, which makes it faster. It's not by a lot faster, but it is much faster and simpler to read, simpler to use, simpler to write. All right, we're going to talk about these keywords very shortly. But what I want to do is I want to talk about why this is the next best decision structure. Well, prior to C#7, there were some restrictions on writing switch statements, but please understand there's not that many now. You can really write switch statements on any data type because those governing types or the sentinels or the Boolean expression that we're not writing anymore, it doesn't matter what that really is. It is a good practice that we include a default case. It's not always the case. Understand the default case is akin to the else statement in if statements. And yeah, there's no fall through code when it comes to switches. You actually have to write, there's no fall through rule with switches like there are in if statements. You have to expressly write the break or it will continue to walk on down that case or that switch. So what are some best practices when implementing switches? Well, use an enumeration with a switch statement or structure because the enumeration may or may not change that quickly. And enumerations are easier to iterate over or to switch on. So recall that enumerations allow you to apply values to a list of constants or a list of constraints, right? And those constraints are based upon what you want that value to be. Normally, and more specifically, enumerations are mapped to an integer value. And so it is highly suggested that you stick with that. Otherwise, let's talk about what they look like. So here we go. We're back here again. And let's take a look at this right here. Let's convert this if statement to a switch statement, right? Well, if I wanted to do that, all I would have to say is switch first number. That's it. Switch first number. And now I have a switch statement that is looking at the variable first number and pulling out the value. Now, let's write some switch statements to see if we can catch what's coming out of that value. So if the first case is 1, then I want you, case number 1, I want you to console.writeLine 1. It's 2. Let me see why it's angry for a second. Right. So I'm getting an error here. I'm wondering if I'm required to write the break. I'm required to write the break. And that's interesting. That is interesting. Let me see something. Nice. Syntactically, I learned something new today. So in the past, you were able to do what I just did there. You can write break whenever you wanted it. You didn't have to, it didn't force you in each of the statement blocks to write it, but it looks like in each of these statement blocks, I'm required to write that. So that's what I'm going to do. Now the errors went away. But let's talk about what's happening here. What's going to run? What's going to fire? So at line 7, you have the word switch. It's a keyword. We're switching on the variable first number. Now, this normally is an enumeration. And just for shiggles, well, I thought I still had my enumeration. I don't, but I can write one. It's not that hard. But either way, your enumeration is normally what you want to use in your switches to switch on to ask a specific question. But in this case, really all I'm asking is first number one, is it a 2 or is it default? Now, if I could debug this, you would see when we did the if statement, it walks through each of the lines of the if statement, but on the switch statement, it doesn't do that. It goes directly to the case that it matches almost immediately. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. So if you run this, I should get the value 2. And the reason why I should get the value 2 is because the second case is true. Once this runs, it's going to write the letters, the word 2, and then it's going to break. It's not going to run anything else. Now, the reason why it ran sweet is because we still have our if statement down here. But the 2 comes from the case, the switch, right? What happens when it doesn't know what to write? Or what happens when the first number case does not exist? This is why we have the default. So the default catches all the other cases, all the other situations where first number is not met by a case that we wrote. In this case, we should see unknown, and we shouldn't see anything come out of the if statement. Oh, if it's not equal to 1, that catches a lot. It literally catches everything else other than 1. So yeah, it would write that. Never mind. And there you go, unknown. And this is really the way your switch statement works. It's not rocket science. It's very straightforward. But there's one more thing I want to show you. So if when writing your switch statement, you need to do multiple cases, all right? The way you would do this is you would actually take your case and you put it one after the other. Now, in this case, and I'm going to get rid of these 2 breaks. We don't need this anymore. Now, if first number equals 2, what will happen is it'll determine that this case is the true case because it's 1 or 2, right? So if first number is 1, it'll write 1. If first number is 2, it'll write 1. Because those 2 cases share the same break statement. They share the same break statement. So there you go, 1. And that's it. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about with the switch. Very simple decision structure to go over. Either way, that's it. I'm going to do my next micro lecture shortly. So as I say in all my lectures, all my videos, good luck, have fun, ciao.